And it is Thursday morning, the 16th of November. We're closing in on Thanksgiving, which is an amazing time of the year where we can step back and appreciate life and all of the components of our lives that we need to be thankful for, we need to be aware of. So I know you were just down in Florida, Barrett. How much did you find to be thankful for down there while the rest of us were enduring cold weather, freezing rain, and the combined misery of the end of autumn?
Well, it really is a contrast. I'm always amazed. You can go just a couple hours in a plane, and all of a sudden the climate is so amazingly different. Because yeah, it was 80s and sunny and gorgeous almost every day. So within the world, there definitely is a duality, and the Midwest to Southern Florida is one of those contrasts. So very grateful, as you say, very thankful for that opportunity to be there. But really, even grateful to come back here too. I feel such love and joy here in the Chicago area. There's so many good people, so much warmth of a spiritual nature that even if the outside form turns gray and cold and rainy and eventually snowy, it doesn't really seem that cold in a real way to me.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting because when it gets really cold and you're feeling kind of sullen, it's that communion, that joining together with friends and family that brings warmth into the most Arctic environments that we seem to be surrounded by. So once again, it's the ego attempting to tell us that we are disconnected and separate from God. And the real truth of the matter is we can see the face of God in every person we encounter. And that brings a huge amount of warmth into our lives during these winter months.
Yeah, that light is in everyone if we're willing to see it. If we're having interactions where we don't see that light, we can be sure it's because we don't want to. And that's not always a very welcome point because usually those people we don't see the light in, we think that they're to blame, that they're wrong, they've done something bad, they're sinful in whatever way we think of that. And as we're learning in the course, that there really is no sin, that there only is perfect innocence. And coming to see that in everyone in our entire life is actually the way that we come to know it in ourselves. So again, not necessarily an easy thing, but it is a worthy goal. And it really is the only goal that any of us need to strive for. And ultimately, there's no real striving for it anyway. It's just accepting the truth that's already so. But there is work involved in that, which is why the course has a workbook and why we do the lessons and we keep practicing the forgiveness. So we stick with it, and eventually we get the payoff, which is this state of happiness, the state of joy, which really pervades everything in our lives. And I think as we head into the holiday season here, often these things are kind of a little bit more easy to see because we do focus on things like love and kindness and happiness, and we actually want these in our life. And we can obviously extend that out to every day in our life, but these times usually highlight these points for us to focus in on. So I really enjoy this. I'm glad we're rolling into the holiday season, and I'm glad we're continuing to do these. As we just talked, I think you said this might be our 132nd version of the Miracle Within, which is something like that. The number is pretty impressive, I guess. It's like we just keep talking and the number goes up, and then I'm like, oh, we're just having a good conversation, and it just keeps going.
Yes, that communion that we experience, that we're able to share via technology, is the beauty of the whole process. Is, we can take our combined experience and extend that to those around us who are interested in understanding what the course is all about and experiencing a miracle in their lives. So it turns into this beautiful, beautiful journey through space and time instead of what normally we encounter as, the appearance of an erratic and unpredictable world is intervened. It is compromised by the truth. And so this is probably a good place to mention that we have a website called themiraclewithin.org. That's all one word. And if you go there, you'll have a .org. You'll have an orgasm over A Course in Miracles.
I was wondering why it was having that effect on me. I didn't realize it was the web address causing that to happen.
Well, it's a combination of elements, but the address gives you kind of a sense of where things are going, and then all of a sudden you have all these different little snippets about A Course in Miracles, and of course our various videos. And we are going to be recording another video besides this one this morning that is another movie review, and it's going to be a humdinger, so you need to check that out too.
Yes, I'm going to be humming and dinging quite a bit, so yeah, that's the best part of it.
Well, that's the beauty of life in cyberspace. You can just ding, 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 ding all you want, and it just gets better and better. Well,
we should probably get on with this ding then, and share a little bit of what we're also here to share, which is the ending of the pamphlet, the Song of Prayer, which we've been going over the last few months, line by line, and we're coming into the very end of the pamphlet, which is the last few paragraphs in the section called "The Holiness of Healing," and it's just, again, it's a really beautiful epic poem, basically talking about how we come into our truth. So here we go. Help me to wake my children from the dream of retribution and a little life beset with fear that ends so soon it might as well have never been. Let me instead remind you of eternity, in which your joy grows greater as your love extends along with mine beyond infinity, where time and distance have no meaning. While you wait in sorrow, heaven's melody is incomplete, because your song is part of the eternal harmony of love. Without you, creation is unfulfilled. Return to me who never left my son. Listen, my child, your father calls to you. Do not refuse to hear the call for love. Do not deny to Christ what is his own. Heaven is here, and heaven is your home. So, it's very beautiful, obviously, talking about how oneness is incomplete without us, which really makes sense, right? Oneness couldn't be whole if something was left out of it. It couldn't be everything if there was any part that wasn't there. So obviously, as Jesus uses these words like Christ and Son of God, he's talking about us, right? You are the Christ, you are the Son of God. And interestingly, all of the Course is basically written from the perspective of Jesus. Jesus is the voice of the Course, the author of the Course. But these last several paragraphs of the Song of Prayer are written as though God himself were talking to us. Now, this is, again, a sort of unique way of giving us the same message, giving us the message that God knows us as one with him. And obviously, him is a metaphor too. God is not male or female. God is simply unending love. And so we come back into that, and obviously Father and Son too fall in that, right? There's really no gender in heaven. There's no form. There's no duality. So there is only oneness. But this is a poetic way of talking about our coming back into that reality, that we've never really left this truth. And all we have to do is remember it in order to experience it once more.
Exactly. And what I love about this is actually the way this paragraph starts off. Help me to wake my children from the dream of retribution and a little life beset with fear that ends so soon. Now, that is a very profound observation. You know, we cling to the dream life that we have initiated here, knowing full well that it will be terminated in 10 years or 30 years or 50 years or whatever. And that's such a tiny snippet of time. But during this journey through space and time, most people are dealing with grief and sorrow and frustration and rage and anger. And yet they still want to hold on to it. They still want to cling to it and hope that they can survive another day, another hour, another minute. And it really is an important giveaway. It's an innuendo here that the truth of our life is only going to occur when we give up this material life. You know, and that brings me back to a thought that Jesus shared to the apostles when he said, I die daily. And that's that releasing the ego. You do have to die in order to live. Again, a part of the paradox of living in this realm. But I think that this gives us a very clear vision of what is demanded of us, not by God, but by ourselves. We have to be willing to die to this personal self in order to claim the truth of who we really are. And we do that in these incredibly small little snippets called the holy instant. It only takes an instant. You don't have to like die eternally. You know, I mean, eventually the ego will fade. It will eventually die off of its own accord. But the more that we can access that state of reunification, the more we are able to validate our true identity and to step more clearly into love each and every time that we enter that region.
Yeah, it is continual and ongoing, but it happens in an instant, as you say. So it's kind of this amazing thing where our goal is for our life to turn into a waking meditation. A meditation where we see that this world we awake to when we wake up in the morning is actually yet another dream. So we seem to awaken from dreams to this world, when in fact we've actually just come into another layer of dreaming. And that's one of the big messages of the Course, is that this whole physical world of time and space is just a dream. We've fallen asleep from our reality as one with God. And as we do this healing work, we come more and more into the awakening state. So there's sort of this experience that some of us have had, which is called lucid dreaming, where we're in our dream, but we know that we're having a dream. And once we're in this place, our whole dream experience can change pretty dramatically, right? If there's a monster chasing us, all of a sudden it turns into a flower. Maybe we just take off and start flying through the air. All these things that we know, oh my gosh, this is a dream. I can do whatever I want. Well, in a similar way, we start to realize that what's happening here is just as unreal. And it can be kind of shocking. And like you were saying, Chris, most of the time we don't want to let go of it. Even when we start to hear this idea, usually there's a lot of rejection around it. Oh, I don't want to think everything here is really a dream. You know, oh, that sounds awful. I really want to be this thing, like you said, that suffers. A body obviously can experience pain, can die, can get old, can get sick. All these things that can be really unpleasant. But when we start to get more and more that the body is not what we are, it's just an idea, then we don't actually have to suffer even if the body is going through something hard. And people who work with these concepts start to have some of these experiences. Gary Renard, you know, pretty well-known teacher of the Course, shared an experience where he was traveling through an airport and someone on the down escalator bumped into him. And he fell over. He fell like face first onto the escalator stairs, which obviously, anyway, you know, we all know those are pretty metallic and sharp. And yeah, he got pretty cut up. And I think he might have had to have stitches a few places, but he found he didn't experience very much pain with this, and it was kind of surprising, right? Like you would think an experience like that would hurt quite a lot, but what had happened is he'd healed a certain amount of his own inner guilt and shame, and so it didn't have to manifest. Even as the outer form might have looked painful and upsetting, his experience was less painful than it would have been. And this is the kind of thing that we can start to have as experiences too as we go through our lives. It just means we have less suffering as we go through our life, and that sounds really pretty nice.
Yeah, that is definitely a desired outcome, no doubt about that. And yeah, we've been, living in this region of a dream within a dream since the dream began. Edgar Allan Poe, about 150 years ago, talked about that dream within a dream and how there was this ongoing state of delusion. And that's exactly what happens. You start working with a course, your ego gets inflamed, and you sit down to do a 10-minute meditation, and you wake up an hour and a half later, and you've had all these dreams going on. And sometimes they're quite lovely. Sometimes they're very seductive. Other times they're scary and not as happy. So the more that you address your fear, the more that your dreams, both within this dream as well as this dream itself, will start to soften, and you'll find less fearful events appearing on the timeline of your existence. So going to this next paragraph here, says creation leans across the bars of time to lift the heavy burden from the world. Lift up your hearts to greet its advent. See the shadows fade away in gentleness. The thorns fall softly from the bleeding brow of him who is, this is my dramatic moment here, who is the Holy Son of God. And that's one of the things that happens just over and over again. We are constantly putting Jesus back on the cross, and we need to really be mindful of that. Every time you have a judgment against somebody, you basically are repeating the crucifixion in your own very personal way. And you might want to consider the horror of those images as you go through life, condemning those around you. How lovely are you, child of holiness? How like to me, how much we are like Jesus himself. How lovingly I hold you in my heart and in my arms. How dear is every gift to me that you have made, who healed my son and took him from the cross. Arise and let my thanks be given you. And with my gratitude will come the gift first of forgiveness, then eternal peace. And that really is a big part of what we're locked into here. We carry that burden of guilt for having crucified Jesus. And that really is one of the big wedges that we have to address, we have to let go of. Imagine Jesus in that position of being crucified, and in the midst of the horror and chaos says, "Forgive them, Father." He didn't allow himself to indulge the idea of, God, get your ass down here and kick their ass collectively. He was very much in a state of realization that the body is temporary anyway, that it's going to die one way or the other. And he had completely surrendered his attachment to the body. So it was very easy for him to forgive all of mankind for this hideous caricature of being a child of God, the old God of vengeance and an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and becoming the child of the true God, which is the God of forgiveness and eternal love.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really poetic and beautiful symbol of that, right? All the ways that we have crucified Jesus or crucify anyone. Again, we're always reenacting that whenever we're blaming anyone, whenever we're making ourselves out to be the victim in any way. And like you said, that can be seductive, just like these dreams are seductive. There's an attraction to guilt. This is one of the obstacles to peace, that we're actually attracted to guilt and the suffering that goes along with it. Now that seems pretty masochistic, right? Well, it is, and the truth is, you are a masochist. So I'm going to break the news to you. We all are. We all are masochists because we wouldn't be believing these things unless a part of us wanted to suffer. Now, it's not fun to look at this, but it is helpful, right? It's helpful to see this in ourselves so that we can let go. As he says, we can take the son down from the cross. We can take whoever we're holding cross, whether it's her boss, family member, anyone that we're having an issue with, politician. We can take them down from the cross, and what simultaneously happens is we are taking ourselves down from the cross. It's not always easy to see, but as we see our brother, so we see ourselves. So if we're condemning our brother, we're actually condemning ourselves. Now, it doesn't mean we're literally condemning ourselves for the same action or issue that we're blaming them for. Ultimately, we are blaming ourselves for the idea that we've separated ourselves from God. And it's not real, right? It didn't happen. So there is no guilt, there is no cause for suffering. There is no problem. Not in truth, only in a wild fantasy. That is what this experience is.
That's very true. And, the thing that I observe with myself over and over again is that in actual fact, it frequently does take on the same form. I will cut somebody off in traffic unconsciously, and then half an hour later, somebody will cut me off, and my ego wants to go into a rage, but then by being mindful for just a second, it's like, oh, well, that's, what goes around comes around. I'm seeing this, and by dismissing it, by forgiving it, I am no longer attached to it. So it becomes a minute by minute, hour by hour exercise in being present for your life. And unfortunately, 99% of the population is in avoidance of being present and in the moment. We're entertaining the past, we're anticipating the future, but we're never living right here in this moment.
Yeah, I have a similar but slightly different story where sometimes when I'm driving, somebody's wanting to cross the street. I'm like, pedestrian, get out of my way. I'm trying to come through. And then, the next day I'll be the pedestrian on the sidewalk trying to cross the street. And the car wants to get through. And I'm like, hey, I'm a pedestrian. Come on. I got the right of way.
That's interesting. I'm lucky in that, when I was growing up in Colorado and California, they both have very stringent laws about pedestrians. And the pedestrian is basically God. So you at all times are alert to what's going on with people walking. And at the same time, pedestrians in those two regions, at least in my childhood, they were more courteous too. They were more mindful of, not just running out in the middle of traffic. But nonetheless, my experiences with pedestrians is that I always try my best to stop and give them leeway and help them get across the street with their bags and baggage.
Well, that is nice. And I agree that is the best way for it to go. When I was down in Florida last week, I was driving and I didn't know exactly where I was going. So I was kind of looking at my phone. Well, I look up and I'm basically crossing, going past a crosswalk, and there was someone who was about to start to cross. Well, again, in Florida, it's like very, very strict. Someone's going to stand in the crosswalk, everyone stops, right? I mean, it's a little different than in Chicago where the car basically goes if it can. So we had the windows open and I'm blowing through the crosswalk. This guy basically calls me an asshole, tells me I should let pedestrians cross. I'm like, okay, well, I guess he had me there.
Well, that's radical forgiveness, coming around for, another cycle of contemplation. As you forgive him, you forgive yourself, and both of you are released from that charged experience.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's exactly what I had to do, right? I had to do my internal work because there was this desire to, I don't know, shout back at him kind of that came up for me, or maybe apologize. But by the time any of these thoughts went through my head, we were driving, so we were way past where he was, um, and there wasn't anything to say or do other than just do the internal work of releasing the guilt, releasing the judgment of myself, the judgment of him for calling me that word, and all these things that were going through my mind. But then to just come back to the realization that I can do my best in any moment, and obviously that moment I didn't follow the rules and someone was upset. But that on a deeper level, there is no sin, right? So nothing bad really happened. Now that doesn't mean I couldn't have pulled my car over and gone back and apologized to him or something like that. I can still take action in the world, but on a deeper level, I can see that it's all coming from a place of love. And if I use everything that happens here for that purpose, it's here to help me for my awakening.
Absolutely.
So, asshole or not, I'm going to read this last paragraph. So now return your holy voice to me. The song of prayer is silent without you. The universe is waiting your release because it is its own. Be kind to it and to yourself, and then be kind to me. I ask but this, that you be comforted and live no more in terror and in pain. Do not abandon love. Remember this, whatever you may think about yourself, whatever you may think about the world, your Father needs you and will call to you until you come to him in peace at last. So again, that's how the story ends, right? No matter what the drama is, no matter what's going on in our lives, the story ends with peace. The story ends in love. The story ends with us awakening from this dream. And that's a really happy thought.
Yeah, that's the only really lucid thought is to, get past how much we have invested in this idea that we are separate, and to be able to accept everybody around us with the same direct level of love that we have for ourselves. As Jesus said, the first and great commandment is to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy mind and all thy soul. And the second is like unto the first. It's on the same level. To love thy neighbor as thyself. So that is a encapsulation of everything that the Song of Prayer is trying to present to us.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah. So it feels like actually just a good ending. So I wanted to thank everyone who was at our Exploring the Course event that we had on November 5th. Chris and I joined a few other course teachers. There were 5 of us talking about the course all afternoon. It was a really beautiful event. We're going to be doing another one in the spring. So as the details for that get planned, we'll keep you posted on that. As Chris mentioned, we're doing a talk about the movie Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 2. So we're recording that a little later this morning, and it'll be out for your viewing pleasure as well. And we're going to keep doing new things. So just stay posted, because there's all kinds of great things that are happening. And you can find all of it at the website Chris is doing such a great, incredible job with, which is themiraclewithin.org. And you can check out the things I'm doing at my website, which is barretthedeen.com. And yeah, just know that you are loved. And as we go into this season of Thanksgiving, remember to adopt an attitude of thankfulness. when you cultivate gratitude within yourself, you find that you just live from that place of joy more and more easily. So if you're having a rough day, think of a few things that you're actually thankful for, and you might be kind of surprised at how that changes things, how it sort of lightens the heavy clouds that are hanging over you. So it's a good practice, and one I definitely encourage.
Absolutely. And I will inject here that a week from today, we are going to be stuffing our turkeys and basting our hams and yams and corn and asparagus and all of those wonderful things that are representative of the harvest. And that's what A Course in Miracles is. It is a harvest of grace. So we want to extend to all of our viewers and to everybody on the planet our deep and very pure appreciation for you as God has created you. We thank you for joining us, and we extend a thanksgiving to each and every one of you. And I know myself, I'm going to be building a tofu turkey this year, and we'll be putting it on the table and laughing as people get up and walk away.
Well, I have had an experience with the tofurkey because I was a vegan for a while, and I have to say it was surprisingly good. So I'm not sure what kind you're making, but there are actually some good meat alternatives out there that I at least give an endorsement to.
Well, I was being cynical, as I am occasionally given to be, because I live with a house filled with carnivores. So we will be having a plump butterball turkey and the whole ham that occasionally turns up this time of year. It's very difficult to get a good whole ham unless you go to a specialty butcher shop. But anyway, it will be a delightful adventure, I'm sure, for everybody. And be aware there are people out there who maybe need a place to land on a day like Thanksgiving. So open your heart and, if possible, your home to those around you and share this magic that we call life.
It's a beautiful idea, and yeah, a beautiful note to end on. So we'll be back here on our regularly scheduled Thursday, 2 weeks from now. So looking forward to connecting with you again then.
Have a great one.
All right, you too. Bye, man.
Bye.